as emotionally as he does and did, I am suddenly labeled as an evil man for not doing that. And not only that, but I am embracing this false oath and apparently trying to stop it from coming to the public's attention. Now, there was a YouTube video, and this morning I engaged in a little back and forth play with Minister Belanger concerning this whole issue. And I'll show you how he is going to justify the information he has, fail to look at his lack of ability to process that information, and the result is going to be an imbalance where I'm labeled as a snake. And this is the big problem about that imbalance, where your knowledge outweighs your processing ability. You end up labeling people, you're Jesus-like and they're all sinners. Now this is where he starts equating me with a snake, saying that I'm a Pied Piper, and he starts quoting the Bible, which is what he does. So I let him know that here he is thumping his Bible. And then I poked him a little bit, because we were trying to use logic and reason, and he had to abandon that in order to thump his Bible and take refuge there. At this point, he started referring to the fact that I have an ego, which I do, but I'm pretty cool, so I deserve it. And he makes mention that I'm a snake. Now, as I said, I don't diss the Bible, but I do diss those who would label me a snake merely because I don't share their interpretation. Now, just to set the record straight, I have found much remedy in the teachings of Christ. I believe very strongly that this man knew the law and that his teachings bring much remedy. I have also found much remedy in refusing to believe that anyone else is more empowered than myself to interpret those, or that their interpretation should be shackles upon me. I don't accept that at all. And certainly I don't accept people who call themselves minister and then use the words and the teachings of the Prince of Peace to invite dispute and conflict, which is exactly what he has done. Now, I kind of play with people like this. I got to admit, I'm kind of poking the dog. But his lack of logic and lack of reason is, to me, a little bit funny, although it's useful for demonstrating that having the information but lacking the ability to process that information makes it very easy for him to label me as a snake merely because I'm not sharing his information as he would like me to. You'll notice with people like this that they will never have opinions. There's never his opinion. It's always fact. It's always a provable fact, never an opinion, because his opinion is always fact, and because he can't process information properly, he can't distinguish between his own opinions and facts, and therefore the moment he holds an opinion, it becomes a fact. And you questioning that opinion means you're rejecting a fact in his book, and since you're rejecting a fact, you're an evil man. This is how the mindset works when you have information, but you lack ability to process it. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't believe he's a bad man, and I don't want to be dissing him. I think he's a bit of a wingnut. He smoked way too much pot. And although he has done a lot of digging into certain bodies of words, I don't see how he has stretched his mind into developing a greater degree to process information. And that's really led him astray. My honest belief is that everyone does the best they can with the information they have available, coupled with their ability to process it. I don't think that makes me a snake. And I don't think that his inability to process information properly means that he's an evil man either. And I'm trying not to laugh at the guy. But the idea that that someone is evil because they don't share your opinion concerning something like that is, to me, pretty distressing. Now the other problem comes, as I said earlier, when people have people have a little bit of information, but not enough to keep up with their ability to process information. What happens then? You end up with people who focus on the lack of information. And it is that lack of information which starts to give rise to an imbalance, where in order to fill that void, they will come up with ludicrous things. It reminds me of a little joke that I was working on, where I'm at the racetrack, and I'm just sitting minding my business, and I'm meditating quietly, my eyes are closed, and I hear the sound of hoofbeats, and a guy's talking loudly, and I thought to myself, that must be a leprechaun on a unicorn. And therefore, and so I looked and I opened my eyes, and the unicorn, it was a unicorn and a leprechaun, I was sure of it. However, the unicorn had used its magical powers to shift their physical form so that it just looked like a racehorse and a jockey. But I knew it was a unicorn and a leprechaun, because leprechauns don't use cell phones. See that circular logic? That's the kind of thing people who don't have enough information will rely upon, and they will use logic like that in order to try to fill the void. A lot of this can be fixed, whether or not your imbalance is a result of not having enough information or having more than your ability to process it. You work on one and then the other. To increase your knowledge, dig at these words. Dig at them, get a dictionary, deconstruct these words, and increase your knowledge. Do some studying. But as you do this, you must ensure that at the same time, you are increasing your ability to process the information you uncover. That's where using the LSATs comes into play. It's very important to do that. That's where it's important to create a group of people, which is what the serving soup is about, so that you can, in fact, when you come to these places where you have information and you have trouble processing it, you have a group of people you can process it with. You can develop and grow these abilities. If you don't, you end up starting to think that the whole world is a bunch of evil snakes, or that they're conspiracy theorists, reptilians who want to take over the world. Chances are it's none of those. It's probably something much simpler. It's greed and stupidity, and it's people simply being lazy more than evil. So if you find yourself at a point of imbalance, examine what the problem is. Do you have more information than you do ability to process it? Then put down that information, go increase your ability to process information, and come back to it. If you are lacking the information and you're starting to look at the world not as just a bunch of greedy, stupid people trying to do their best with their information and ability to process it, if you think it's all about Illuminati and the Jesuits and Jewish bankers and reptilians and aliens, then I think you need to do a little bit of digging, and you need to uncover more information. By doing these two things simultaneously, you can avoid falling into either of the traps where you become a Bible-thumping holy roller who labels people as snakes and evil imposters, and you can also avoid the trap of thinking that there's so little hope that you have to start thinking of the world as populated by reptilians who want to eat your brain. Remedy is somewhere in between. Now our second example, I'm going to be using a guy who's been trolling me essentially on the internet, David Merrill Van Pelt. Those of you who are familiar with the forums there, this might be old news to you. I'm using it as a teaching example. I'm hopeful that you guys don't think I'm using these lessons as a means of personal retribution against these people. But I think they prove to be valuable examples of what can happen when you lose balance